Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Caleb.
My name's Damon.
And today we are doing part 2 of our album by the year reviews. If you missed part 1, then I will link that in the description below. I'll also put that on the pinned comment, and I just want to refresh everyone's mind. This wasn't an original idea. I will link the video where I got the idea from in the comment section below.
Last time we started all the way back at 1997, the year I was born. Caleb jumped in at 2001 and we went all the way to 2009. So we're starting off with 2010 now.
Yes, sir. Real quick before we get into it, if y'all don't mind doing me a favor, doing yourself a favor, hitting that like button, hitting subscribe, and turning on the notification icon, because it just helps you know whenever I have a new video out. And if you're someone who watched part 1, turn the noties on, and now see part 2, you're ahead of the game. So let's keep that energy going all 2020. So 2010, super significant album for me. This album was the first CHH album that I ever heard. The first song that I ever heard was track 14, and this album is Rehab by Lecrae, and that song was Background featuring Lite, who later became Mineo. So this album has a lot of ties for me, going back to camp like 9 years ago when I first decided to rap. My brother and I have had really good conversations about this album, so it just holds a really special place in my heart.
That's really cool. I didn't know that Mineo used to go by
Lite. Yeah, he put out his mixtape Sentence Whack in 2009 as Lite, and then he put out what was the song? God Belongs in My City, or In My City, I think it was called, and then Background, and then he went and signed with Reach and became Mineo.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
For me, my 2010 album is Nightmare by Avenge Sevenfold. It's my favorite album by them, hands down. It's the last album I really enjoyed by them, but like City of Evil, that's an awesome album. Their self-titled album, great and everything. I haven't listened to them much since Nightmare, but awesome album. Title track is amazing. Buried Alive, great song. Welcome to the Family. If you're into modern metal music, they're not like super heavy, but they're really good.
Alright, 2011, we get our first Drizzy album with Take Care. You knew it had to be on here, right? This album was very, very significant for Drake, for Toronto music, for Canadian music really in general, and hip-hop. It really changed a lot with like showing emotions and stuff, and at the time that was still kind of frowned upon, and then Drake was like, I'm gonna do it anyway, so Take Care takes the cake for me.
My 2011 album is Ever After by Marinus Trench. This is the album I was introduced to Marinus Trench. I actually thought every song by them was by Headley before this album.
Wow.
Yeah, so I thought all their Masterpiece Theater stuff was
like
by
before
Headley.
Streaming was a thing, guys.
Yeah, so I just heard their stuff on the radio and was like, oh, that's Headley, because they used to sound very similar. This is an awesome album. It's one continuous track actually, so every song bleeds into the next one. Super cool album, check it out.
2012, we have another nostalgic album for me, The Good Life by Triple E. My brother bought me this album for my 11th birthday, because it had just came out the month before. There's a lot of great songs on this. Robot, which was really big. I'm Good with Lecrae. There's a few bangers, and this was actually his last album because he decided to retire because he has medical issues. Then he came back a few years later with Rise, and he's dropped another album since, but this was a great album.
My 2012 album of choice is Vessel by 21 Pilots. I didn't actually get into them until Blurryface came out. Stressed Out came out. And
Damn, wow.
Stressed Out came out and I didn't like that song, and then Ride came out and I loved that song, and then that prompted me to look into these guys, and this is my favorite album by them now. Some people might know Car Radio. What else is on here that people might know? Holding On to You, Migraine, House of Gold.
Yeah.
Ukulele song, beautiful. My favorite song is the intro song, Ode to Sleep.
Yeah.
Super cool song. If you have heard 21 Pilots stuff and you like their more popular stuff, this is a really cool album to check out.
Solid return album. 2013, we have the second Drake album. I tried to make the cap just to 2 spots per artist, because if I didn't do that, Drake would have probably taken 4 of these slots, and I don't want that to happen.
And Kanye would have taken...
the rest. So Drake, Nothing Was the Same. Amazing album. The album that made me fall in love with Drake, made me fall in love with Toronto music. And it really set up what I wanted to do in music sonically back when I was still in middle school. So this album holds a lot of value in my heart.
I think that album was the first time Drake was ever really on the radar for me.
Yeah.
Like the first time that I would have ever heard any of his stuff on the radio. I wasn't really into hip hop until I met Caleb.
Right.
But
I'm an influencer.
Definitely.
Sponsor me, OVO. This album has some great songs too. I mean, the radio singles like Hold On, We're Going Home. I love it. I know some people hate on it. I love it. Trevor hates on it. Whatever, Trevor.
It's fun. It's a fun song.
It is a fun song. Wu-Tang Forever, Too Much, From Time. Great. I want to go listen to it right now, actually.
I didn't know that Drake put out an album this year. Otherwise, I feel like this might have been the same choice with us. Mine is the first hip-hop album that I'm listing. It might be the only hip-hop album. It's Because the Internet by Childish Gambino. This was the album that got me into modern hip-hop.
This man freaking loves this album.
I love this album. Hands down my favorite Gambino project. And
it's beautiful.
It still has the intensity of his like kind of campier stuff, but with a lot more melodic stuff that he kind of shifted to with his
Awaken My Love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you got a couple classics on this album, such as Telegraph Ave.
Yeah, people definitely know the song. Like Sweatpants was huge. 3005 was big. The Worst Guys with Chance.
Yeah.
Even though it was a super tiny feature, but Chance was on it. So.
All she needed was some copyright. So for 2014, I have my first story album, and this was a hard year for me, to be honest, because we had Anomaly come out, which we were just listening to in the car, but I already have 2 Lecrae albums on here. We had some other really good projects, but I ended up going with Cinema by Swoop. And I talked this album up a lot. It's basically like a dramatic movie the whole time, and you're watching. It's so intense, and you're waiting to see what comes next. And I don't want to give away the ending, but you guys should really go listen to that album whenever you have a chance. It's literally like watching a movie.
Oh yeah, and you give me production like notes. Like whenever I ask for references for producing a track for you, there's almost always something off that album ends up on the playlist.
Swoop is a wonderful producer.
For me, my 2014 album is the self-titled album by Hosier, if that's how you pronounce his name. Hosier or Hosier. I'm sure people know the song "Take Me to Church."
People have probably seen this album cover.
Yeah, actually my least favorite song on the album was "Take Me to Church," but that's not because it's a bad song, it's just because this album is great. This was the second album I ever bought on vinyl, I think, and it is just solid. If you like really dark alternative singer-songwriter stuff, it's awesome.
2015, we have another one of my favorite albums, as you well know, Uncomfortable by Andy Mineo. Great album, great live show. This is one of the best live shows I've ever been to.
Oh, yeah?
If anyone watching had an opportunity to go to that concert, please type down in the comment section below how your experience was, because it was amazing, especially when he did the song Vendetta. It was great. It was, oh man, great. Propaganda was there, Jay Gibbons was there, but the album in particular was a really big shift for Mineo and for the genre of CHH in general. And I'm just excited that I was there for that whole movement.
Oh yeah, it really feels like a turning point for him, for sure. Definitely kind of propelled him into that kind of the Sword the Arrow EP style stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's when he begins to be vocally more political in his music, which turned off some people, but you know me, I love trouble, so I was all for it.
My 2015 album of choice is Blurry Face by 21 Pilots. This album is the reason that Masterpiece Theater by Marinus Trench was no longer my favorite album. Once I got into this album, I was like, this is super cool. This is a super cool album. And it's not even my favorite album by them, but it's a really good album. It's super solid. I mean, everybody knows Stressed Out, Ride, you might know Heavy Dirty Soul. so many huge songs off this, honestly. Lane Boy, Fairly Local. The Judge is a standout song. If you don't know it, listen to it.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Now we get to the greatest album of all time, the best on this list by far. And we might honestly stay on this one for a little bit. We have The Human Condition by Mr. John Bellion, not Bellion. Just so beautiful, such a beautiful project. This really propelled him onto the scene for a lot of people. It was completely original. You would never hear another album like this in your life. The New York tie-ins were beautiful, especially me being a fan of hip-hop and picking up all, like, that's the underground New York City, you know?
Yeah.
And all the Dilla, and it was just such a great record. I recommend everyone check it out. As I've said before on this channel, it will change your life.
John Bellion is one of the best producers in the game for finding the pocket, and just the way his music moves rhythmically is incredible.
Yes.
That was going to be my top choice. And Caleb's really angry at me that it's not.
Oh, I am.
But a album came out in 2016 that was very influential to me as an electronic producer, and it actually was one of the first albums that I listened to and said, oh, electronic music can be good. Because I used to hate it, which is really, really weird because that's all I do now for my own stuff is electronic music. I don't have the album for it because I unfortunately have never come across it in a record store. But it's Skin by Flume. Such a cool album.
Was it cooler than this album?
No, for me, yes. For me, it is.
So let me ask you a question. Alright? I respect this guy's opinion, by the way. If it doesn't seem like it, this is unacceptable. Is the intro to that album better than He Is the Say?
It's up there.
Is the second song better than 80s Films?
I'm trying to think what the second song on the album
Look,
is.
fake fan.
The second song on the album is not better than 80s Films. The second song on the album is one of the weak songs on the album. But genuinely, in terms of the electronic music scene, especially the future-based music scene, that this is going to go down as one of the biggest albums for turning points in production in a long time. But 2016 was just a hard year for me in general to pick. I have a ton of runner-ups. Cleopatra by the Lumineers, awesome album that year.
Fire.
Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco, awesome album. Man Machine Poem by the Tragically Hip, super sentimental to me because I was really into the hip and this was their last album before Gord Downie passed away. And Stoney by Post Malone is still my favorite album by Post Malone.
Was that 2016?
It was 2016.
Yeah, I guess it was.
It was a big year for me. It was the year that I went off to university and I really explored a lot of new music that year, so it really helped me broaden my horizons musically.
So you said that the Flume album was influential production-wise.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest albums production-wise for me.
Word. Now, if you want to talk about influential production, let's go to 2017. 2017 was probably the hardest year for me to choose, and just off the bat, what do you think I chose?
I'm trying to think of what even came out.
Let me name some artists that dropped this year for you.
Okay.
Aha Gazelle.
Right.
Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is.
Lecrae.
Yeah.
2017. There's a bunch, honestly. There's a bunch of great music.
It has to be Damn.
You think so? But it's
Kendrick.
not.
What?
It's All Things Work Together by Lecrae, and this was just the most defining album for him, for Reach Records, and I think for CHH. Very well said. There was a lot of political stuff that he touched, but it was very faith-based, and it was sort of like, you know what? I've arrived. That's what it feels like every time I listen to the album. And I had to break my rule last minute because I was gonna go with Kendrick and do three albums for one artist, but it's my freaking channel, so live with it.
My album of 2017 is Gone Now by Bleachers, Jack Antonoff. He was the guitarist for Fun, but he has worked as a producer for so many massive artists. He's worked on the last few Taylor Swift albums, which this guy loves.
Yes.
He's worked with Lorde. I think he's worked with Carly Rae Jepsen. He's worked with Lana Del Rey. Super dreamy 80s sound. And I think this album, he really nailed his production on it. Songwriting is great, but the reason his project is called Bleachers is because he wants every song that he puts out to feel like it could have come from an 80s coming-of-age soundtrack. And I think he really nails that. So if you're into that kind of stuff, super cool album.
If you're into that kind of stuff, track 2. 2018, another tough year for me. J. Cole dropped that year. A really good album. But I ended up going with Dragus Wave by Lupe Fiasco just to show some love. A very, very underrated artist and album. But we've been, talking about this album for a while now. And I feel like it deserved the #1 spot, honestly. I've listened to it so much. And there was a bunch of really good projects that came out this year, such as KOD and Pleasant Hill was another good one.
Pleasant Hill was great.
But I figured that I give Lupe some respect because not a lot of rappers do.
My 2018 album is album 1 by San Holo.
Yeah.
Another really interesting production album. He really turned the tables for me in thinking of electronic music. He incorporates guitar into all of his tracks. His songs are not that typical thing that you think of when you think of EDM. It's not all about, dancing and everything. It's very melancholy, not sad, but not happy at the same time. And I've heard him say so many times that that's what he tries to do when he writes songs. Super, super cool album. Something super different, kind of combines alternative rock with electronic music, so.
It's a very introspective album. Okay, 2019. This is another hard one. All of the recent years are hard. There is a few that I had in the running. One was Lover by Taylor Swift. One was Raul by What Up RG. But I ultimately went with From Michigan with Love by Quid 92. I think I've listened to that the most out of it. I've listened to all 3 of those projects a lot, like an ungodly amount. But that was probably the best one just from a whole story standpoint.
Yeah.
And I felt like Quinn really came into his own as an artist whenever that album dropped. So From Michigan with Love.
And the production on that album was
really good.
Great. It was great.
Really good.
Really
Production
polished.
was really good.
You're not gonna let that go.
Never.
My album for 2019, this was late 2019. The singles dropped in the summer, but it's Good Faith by Madeon. This also, I don't think, is the original cover for the album.
That's the one on Spotify.
Is it the one on Spotify? But
go follow me on Spotify.
He's just so different in his production. He's very French house inspired, very Daft Punk inspired, but mixes that with modern pop really well. Just a great album. It's the first time that he really did his own vocals, and he did it in a way that combines a very robotic feeling with a very natural feeling in a way that I can't explain, so just listen to it.
Yeah, it is a good album. He made me listen to it it was extremely persistent in person that I would listen to that, so it worked, right?
Yeah.
2020, our final year, because neither of us have lived in the future that you know of. I decided to go with Circles by Mac Miller. This was kind of tough. I felt like there wasn't a ton of albums that have dropped that I loved, but Circles was really, really, really well done. It honored Mac so well. It was a great sequel to Swimming, so I think it had to take the cake for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And 2020 is a hard year to do because it's not over yet.
Right.
And I think a lot of great stuff is going to drop in the fall and the winter
Quinn's album's coming out tomorrow as of recording this, so I have a feeling that could take the cake for me for this year, but who knows?
Yeah, just all these artists that have been in quarantine have had so much time to write music, and I think we're going to see a lot of that in the second half of the year. I really wanted to include 2020 because there's an album that came out by this indie electronic artist that I love. It's called Colorblind by Pluko. He is so unique and interesting in his production. He mixes this really maximalist pop with really heavy trap and also somehow at the same time lo-fi. And it's really, really cool. He's currently the biggest inspiration for me production-wise. Really cool. If you're into electronic music, check him out.
Yeah. A few artists that I just wanted to say that were hugely influential but somehow didn't get their names on this list. Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Social Club. There were honestly several. KB was another one that almost took the cake for 2017.
For me, some artists that didn't make it, Audisea, A Moment Apart. That album, I really struggled. I think that was 2017. I wanted to put that one up there, but I just couldn't. That's a big one for me. Also, Petit Biscuit, really huge for me as well, production-wise. But unfortunately, I think that was also a 2017 album, his debut. So, yeah.
Yeah, 2017. We honestly could have done like a top 10 list, I think.
Oh, for sure.
And if you would like to see one, let's get 30 likes on this video. What do you think? We can do 30?
I think we can do 30.
I think we can do 30. But yeah, that's it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching these past couple decades worth of albums and us just talking about it on a sofa. If you'd like to see more of this and more collabs, then let me know on Instagram at Apex Frazier. Let Damon know. Where can they find you?
My artist stuff, Odyssey Music, on everything.
Yes.
It's spelled really weird. Audisea. And then just Damon Geelan for any of my personal socials.
Right. I'll link our socials in the description.
Yeah, just comment and let us know if we missed any albums.
Yeah, and let us know whose list you liked better, because at the end of the day, everything's a competition. Alright, that's it, and I'll see you guys next time. You know another album that I was considering for 2019, or another project?
What?
Revenge of the Sith. But I felt like I couldn't put it, but I loved it. I love that album. I listen to it all the time.
People need to check it out.
Yeah.